My African story begins when I was a young boy, aged 10, sitting in a darkened theater watching the movie Hatari, which captured my imagination about Africa. Since then, my African classroom has taken me through the heart of West Africa, the Horn of Africa, and the forest and savanna of Central and South Africa. Since I was a teenager, Africa has been my teacher. Even though I'm separated by thousands of kilometers, the soul of Africa is with me every day. I live in what is called the Midwest of the United States in a city called Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been an accountant and an advisor to many NGOs in my work career and teaching as well, and also a serious photographer since I was young. So as I said, my African experience started with the movie Hatari, and I have a short clip, which I hope they can show, of that.
Hatari! Hatari!
So while this movie is quite old, John Wayne is long deceased, really terrible way at the time to interact with animals, but it showed me at age 10 a new world which I had not been exposed. A high school teacher and a Nigerian foreign exchange student were my true entree into Africa and African culture. Late Earl Bacalar, a social studies teacher at my high school, had previously worked in northern Nigeria. He arranged for university foreign exchange student Umaru Sanda Amadou to live with my family for a year while he pursued his degree. Amadou provided my first introduction to what was then a far-off land of his Nupe culture, including the practice of Islam. He was the first of many African teachers. A year later, Mr. Bacalar arranged for interested students from my high school to go on a 6-week trip to West Africa, where we'd stay in local universities. I jumped at the chance, and with the support of my parents in June 1970, at age 16, I joined 12 classmates and 300 teachers from the West Coast US state of California on a charter flight which landed in Freetown, Sierra Leone. I remember arriving in Freetown and immediately being struck by the warmth and humidity, and I knew it was different from what I had seen before in terms of the African savanna. One afternoon, I explored the area behind the university we were staying at and had my first taste of tropical rainforest, any place, with hidden monkeys shaking branches above me and beautiful butterflies flying above. During our stay, I befriended a local staff person and got to meet his extended family, all living around a courtyard in Freetown. Our group visited Bunce Island, which was a major holding area for slaves before they were shipped to the New World. Many of the teachers in our group were African Americans, and we were all moved by visiting this site. We then spent time in Ghana and Nigeria. In Nigeria, I learned that Africa is not all rainforest or savanna. We met some chieftains, toured the Yoruba city of Ibadan, and learned that for the Yoruba, the talking drum indeed sends messages like a tonal language. Cultural richness, colors, crafts, the warm way that people interacted were all learning experiences and so different from the Midwestern United States, from which I come. Our exposure to the deep Ashanti culture of Ghana culminated in attending the installment of Nana Pokowari II as a Santahene Emperor King of the Ashanti. A rare event indeed. Not a picture I took, but I got. I had been exposed to the cultural wealth of West Africa, and when I returned to Africa years later, I learned more about the cultural and biological diversity of many other parts of the continent. The island of Madagascar is a fitting microcosm for this rainbow diversity, as in many ways it is like a small mini continent. There are only a few main roads, some of varying condition. People go about their daily lives, and with an ox cart avoid the fate of this auto and this road. When it was time for the classroom to relocate, everyone participated. These are things we don't see, of course, in the United States. I'd come to Madagascar because I really wanted to see some of the large lemurs. Here is the largest, the Indri. Its ear-splitting call is never to be forgotten. Then there are shafaks, also large lemurs, who can jump 6 meters from trees if they're on pogo sticks. And the ringtail lemur, which likes the sun itself. Here we're joined by our friend who happens to be attending this meeting, happily enough. Friend and guide Maris Berger also joining in. The biodiversity of Madagascar is stunning, with geckos with leaf tails, large and very small chameleons, frogs, endemic fruit bats, and the giraffe weevil. I did get to the Masai Mara in Kenya and fulfill my Hatari dreams as well. But of course, all over Africa, there's amazing biodiversity. In Senegal, as Lucy mentioned, got to see African manatee, these other kind of flying foxes, and such profusion of birds. In Langwe Bai in Gabon, saw gorilla, Sidatunga family. And in the forest buffalo, and African finfoot. We also got one time to fly over Gambela National Park and saw the migration of the white-eared cob. My wife is a weaver, so we also on the lookout for weavers when we travel around. Here is a person in southern Madagascar, a weaving priest in Madagascar, Ethiopia, Kenta cloth weaver in Nigeria, and 2 weavers at one loom in Senegal. I visited Marajeji National Park in Madagascar, which is a sacred mountain. Wanted to see you can see the bird here, helmeted vanga, not a hornbill, looks like one, and the silky savak, neither of which we actually got to see. But no matter, Africa, my teacher, had other things in store for us. Here's the mountain that we climbed up a bit. We did get to see a bamboo lemur. They're eating some bamboo. But the trip brought lessons as to what is important for living. It was hard hiking, so on the way down from this mountain, we stopped to get some energy by eating some chocolate bars we'd brought. As we usually do at home, we ate them quickly without a second thought. We also gave one to our guide, but for him, it wasn't the same situation. He took the bar and ate a small piece of chocolate that he savored. Then he wrapped the rest of the bar up and carried it with him to enjoy later, perhaps with others. I have to admit that we almost felt ashamed that we take things like a chocolate bar for granted when we should be savoring it as well. At the beginning of that trip, there was a big problem as a tour agent had failed to inform the village that we were coming, so no arrangements had been made. We had no place to stay and no place to eat, and the sun was setting in the small village at the base of the mountain. As we were standing around wondering what was going to happen, we noticed a circle of elders in vigorous discussion. We learned shortly that they had worked everything out so that we stayed in the bedroom of one of the head families and then had a nice dinner of rice and sardines, as you can see here, in the home of the local WWF conservation worker. This was certainly not a first world experience, as very few people in our city or country would leave their home to give their bed to a stranger with short notice. We were humbled by their generosity, and the meal was one of the best ones we'd ever had in Africa. Africa, my teacher, showed me many places where the past is connected to the present. Here are some petroglyphs from northern Sudan that speak of a time when the Sahara was not pure desert. Ancient cultures go back thousands of years in Sudan. The city of Kerma existed 5,000 years ago when this mud brick pyramid was built. The kingdom of Kush existed for 1,400 years, including 200 years as the rulers of Egypt. And they built pyramids and temples long after the pharaohs of Egypt stopped. Here is the lion god warrior named Apatamak, one of the temples. Conditions are challenging in the Sahara as a sandstorm stopped traffic, but the Nile cuts through and provides water for irrigation. In Khartoum, the two rivers, the Blue and the White Nile, come together. Further north, the third cataract of the Nile looks like it may have looked 1,000 years ago. In the middle of the Nubian desert, the local people still haul water from deep ancient wells by camel and then fill bags for transport and quenching thirst. In the US, there's been many aspersions cast against Muslims in the last several years. So in visiting Sudan, we were concerned that we would not be received well. But like almost everywhere in Africa, the opposite was true. We were welcome as guests. Africa, my teachers, showed that people approach their lives with dignity and grace and hospitality. In Ethiopia, there are many places where the past is connected to the present. The old city of Harar in Ethiopia has been that way since the Middle Ages. It is a walled city, and walking through the streets feels as if you were in a different time. We actually stayed in a guest house in the middle of the city. It's fantastic. True to Africa, it is not a reconstructed historical tourist trap, but a living, breathing place. Most of us living in North America think that coffee came from Colombia or Brazil. The truth is that coffee was first grown in Ethiopia and is honored there today. Northern Ethiopia is a place of history and faith. Traders still bring salt from salt mines to be sold in communities. It is also a place of many Coptic Christian sites. At Lalibela, churches are carved out of rock, like this most famous called St. George. Farther north in Tigray, the churches were carved into rock at the top of cliffs. We followed these white-clad worshipers to the top of Abuna Yamata, climbed rocks and traversed ledges, besides being ledges, to reach the church carved into rock, where we're surrounded by murals and a priest holding a Coptic Bible, ancient Coptic Bible. It was sad to hear of some of the recent strife in the area, which hopefully will resolve itself. When I first came to Africa, all I heard about were Western-based conservation organizations working to save wildlife. As I traveled and made more contacts, I discovered there were all sorts of up-and-coming African leadership in conservation. Here's Thomas, who spent his life saving turtles and tortoises. We had that in a prior presentation, along with his wife, Lucy, who introduced me, who does the same for African manatees and other marine mammals. When we first visited South Africa in 1999, we were guided by Marsberger, an amphibian expert. He introduced us to Keith Begg and also Colleen, I know was on this attending, shown here. And Colleen at that time was doing her groundbreaking research on honey badgers. I learned of an unexpected conservation story after seeing this Aldabra tortoise in a zoo in our state. I was curious as to what was Aldabra. Well, I learned it is a remote part of the country of Seychelles in the Indian Ocean as part of Africa. Due to its isolation, it has high biodiversity in the waters surrounding the archipelago and on land. The last flightless bird species in the Indian Ocean, the Aldabra rail, survives there. Their sacred ibis, like are found in many parts of Africa, but in these sacred ibis have a blue eye. They're large coconut crabs that have become quite rare on other islands, and a flying fox found only on Aldabra. And then there are the tortoises. Not to be confused with the Galapagos tortoise, they only live in Aldabra and a few nearby islands. During the day, they stay under bushes so as not to cook in their shells in the hot sun. At 4:30, when the sun was lower, they come out. I was trying to photograph this large male when he approached me and kept approaching. This is very unusual since all others I saw were mostly shy. In any event, I kept backing up and it kept approaching me in slow motion. Finally, I moved off to enjoy a snack. This unique environment was slated to be destroyed for an air base in the 1960s, but was saved due to an outcry from citizens and scientists in the UK after a BBC production showed the incredible richness of the area. It was an early conservation success story for Africa and for the world. Another African conservation success story, which we did hear about in this series in the past, goes back hundreds of years. Menzguasa in Ethiopia has been a locally protected grassland for a very long time. At 3,200 meters, it is an African myth buster. At night it gets quite cold, and here are plants with frost on them. With good preservation, the plant and animal life are diverse, including gelada, the endangered Ethiopian wolf. And we visited a local village there where the barley was being threshed and met the family that was working in this area. Africa, my teacher, taught that conservation in Africa can far transcend the goodwill of outside efforts with local commitments and participation. There is always a danger of visitors to Africa treating local people as tourist attractions. At a whitewater challenge in South Africa, we came across this sign inviting us to see the last Bushman tribe display. Behind the stage, there was a group of San that were gathered in an area to be gawked at as if in a zoo. Needless to say, I took no photos and we left as soon as we could. In Western Ethiopia, tourists visit the Omaha Valley to see various tribal groups who are known for their body adornments and decorations. We visited the Mercy for a few days. I'd been hesitant to go there after the Bushman experience, but we decided to go. And here is a woman is showing her large lip plate for which the Mercy are known. But for me, it wasn't that the lure of the exotic, but the beauty of the people and the artistic talent of the youth who are skilled but creative body painters. I've been guilty as anyone with presumptions about Africa. I went to Somaliland to explore its biodiversity amid mornings of great danger and backwardness. Like so many times in Africa, the truth was different than the perceived fiction. Somaliland has been independent of Somalia for 29 years, yet it is not recognized by much of the international community and does not have a functional currency. As can be seen here, the country figured out how to adapt to that problem by developing a cashless economy. Here is my friend and guide and environmentalist, Abdijama, paying for some provisions with his cell phone. There's no cash register in that store, as they also receive the payment in their electronic account. So Somaliland is far ahead of most Western economies in being cashless. The Somali regions of the Horns of Africa also have significant biodiversity and friendly people. I met a group of students visiting a major pictograph site near the capital Hargeisa. The bush of the region is quite an interesting mix of plant species with birds and rare antelopes. Including the Bira, which is found in Somaliland and a few other small places, and the Dibitag, which is like a smaller version of a gerenuk, slender version of a gerenuk, in the Ogaden region of Ethiopia. Having had such meaningful visits to Africa, my wife and I decided we had to share this with our family. So we took 4 of our grandsons and our daughter to Zimbabwe. They got to see all sorts of iconic African wildlife. For one of my grandsons who loves cats, seeing his first lion was a thrill of a lifetime. They were able to swim and fish in a tributary of the Zambezi and track and find a lion on foot at Mana Pools. But we knew that a true African experience was more than just wonders in the national parks. So we spent a day in Chinatimba, the town adjacent to Victoria Falls. There the boys got to play soccer, also which we call soccer, usually call football, and we had lunch with a local family in their house. My daughter helped with some preparations amid cleanup. My oldest grandson learned to make a drink from the fruit of the baobab. We came to learn, but in this case, learning happened on both sides. Our host was surprised when my daughter helped do the dishes and clean up, as she assumed that all white people had servants to do that kind of work. It was another warm experience with African hospitality. It seems that Africa is always filled with surprises. Africa, my teacher, has provided so much more than one would ever expect. Many tourists, of course, go to see and enjoy the Big Five, but Africa, my teacher, sometimes reveals other secrets of nature. At the Langui Bai in Gabon, we watched a gorilla face off with elephants. I never read about that in a textbook. We were in Zanzibar and went to Jozani National Park to see the red colobus. It was late in the afternoon, so we went with our guide to various habitats, including the groundwater forest there. He noticed much activity in trees to the right of our trail, and I started taking photos of a lithe mammal chasing a squirrel. The guide mentioned that it was a rare sighting. I did not realize how rare until that night when I looked up the mammal he mentioned, which was a Zanzibar servaline genet. It had only been discovered by science in 1992 and then only seemed to have been photographed by camera trap. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be the first person to photograph such a rare species in the wild. Finally, we were in Botswana during the green season, hoping to follow the zebra migration. Late one afternoon, we were heading back to camp. We saw a zebra lying down near the side of the road. Concerned that it might be injured, we watched it for a while as dusk approached. It stood up and we could see a hoof sticking out. It was about to give birth. So we sat quietly and watched as a new life entered the world. My experiences in Africa have been made possible by many amazing people along the way. I'd like to acknowledge and thank late Earl Backlars, Omar Sanda Amadou, Maris Berger, Abdi Jama, Lucien Thomas Jane, John and Nikki Stevens, Doug McDonald, and Sangeeta Prasad. Africa, my teachers, taught me so much. I've been so much left to learn, and I dream of the day when I can return. And now I have, to wrap up, a short music video I did with My African Dream, sung by Kimi Skota with Andy Rio conducting.
Sometimes alone in the evening, I look outside my window, shadows in the night. I hear the voice of distant crying, the darkness multiplying, and the weary hearts denied. All I feel is my heartbeat, beating like a drum, beating with confusion. All I hear are the voices telling me to go, but I will never run, 'cause in my African dream, there's a new tomorrow. My African dream is a dream that we can follow. Night begins to fall. I listen for your call. I listen for your heartbeat. Alone, my dream is just a dream, another false illusion, a shadow in the night. All I want is for a heartbeat to beat just as one, to silence that confusion. Then the pain and the illusion will disappear again, so we will never